Hey guys, today we're taking a look at the TL-50, probably my favorite weapon for the heavy right now. Its high rate of fire, high DPS, allow you to really shred through people at close range. It's probably the closest you'll get to feeling like an assault as a heavy, I would say. It has a really quick cooldown time, which actually turns out to be about 1 second after you press the X button, which for a heavy weapon is phenomenal. I don't have exact numbers on the other heavy weapons yet, but I will be getting to them as I go through this testing series. And then we can compare that in retrospect. So anyway, you got a little bit of gameplay going on in the background here, just while I do my little intro spiel. And you're going to see I've got a marksman equipped on this TL-50, and you're going to see some really nice, as I get a headshot kill, my cooling just immediately resets. I think that's a pretty huge benefit on this gun, as you'll see right there. Just 3 kills in a row, no worries about heat at all. So that can be a good thing to look at. I honestly kind of slept on that for a long time and only recently realized its potential. But anyway, we don't need to take up the whole video talking about marksman. Anyway, so we're going to get into the TL-50, doing some testing on it, DPS, reloads, and spread, and effective range, all sorts of stuff. But I got a lot of material here, so we're going to try to cram it down and get through it as quick as we can. So basically what I'm going to be doing is I'm showing you the testing process here real quick. I basically got these two guys here with different attachments, different cards, and then I basically just sit here and spray the wall. I run a timer that tells me exactly how long it took to dump those rounds. I can go back and count frame by frame and look at the bolts that were expended. That lets me get rate of fire, DPS, and all that other stuff. So I basically just did this a whole bunch of times with every combination of everything and tried to record it as best as I could. So one other thing I want to look at here as we're going through these cooling analyses is this spread pattern right here. I went ahead and drew this kind of shape around it because I think it kind of helps you visualize just how much wider in general this default spread is, and you'll also notice just how much less dense it is. You'll see a lot of air gaps in there where bolts are just kind of flying all over the place compared to the one on the left, which is fairly controlled, fairly tight. There's really not a whole lot of that light red space there because the bolts are all generally hitting in the same area. So that just kind of shows you just how much that improved spread helps and how much I kind of think it's necessary for this gun to be effective outside of 10 meters. So the coolest thing I actually found in all this is that the marksman card, when equipped and active, will get you 1 bolt more than having the improved cooling card equipped on the TL-50. This shouldn't happen by any stretch of the imagination because the marksman card is only supposed to give 40% increase. The improved cooling card takes you from 19 bolts to 29 bolts, which is a 55% increase. So if you have no improved cooling card equipped and marksman equipped, you should only get 40%. But instead, you get slightly over 55%. It basically seems like when it calculates the amount of extra bullets you get, it bases it off of if you had the improved cooling card equipped, which makes no sense, but hey, I'll take it, right? So now the next thing here is with improved cooling and a marksman bonus active, it's absolutely insane. You get 7.2 seconds and 46 bolts, which is just gnarly. And we'll go into more detail on this whenever I do the full summary, but obviously that's pretty nice to have. And with marksman, being able to refresh every single time you press X and you keep the 40% reduction, this can be permanent if you want it to be. Just get 1 headshot kill. So that 7.2 seconds is huge. So the next thing that I looked at was the gold overheats and how expert weapons handling seems to affect it. What I did find out is that improved cooling, the attachment, the mod, has no effect on the gold overheats. It doesn't give you any more actual shots during the gold period. Now, of course, improved cooling will give you more shots during the white period after the gold, so you do get overall more shots, but the gold period itself is exactly the same whether you have improved cooling equipped or not. The final numbers I ended up with for the gold overheat with expert weapons handling was right around 10 seconds. I got 9.72 in 10 seconds. The gold overheat with no expert weapons handling was right around 6 seconds. So you get an extra 4 seconds, which is 2/3 of 6 seconds, and that makes perfect sense. 66%. No bugs here, and unfortunately definitely no bugs that help us like that marksman bug does. So the next thing I did was I just double checked that improved cooling didn't have any effect on reloads of any kind. As far as the actual cooldown time, it only affects the overheat time. So all the cooldowns, when you do it manually, come to about a second. The cursor speed as it moves across to get all the way to the bottom is 3.4 or so seconds. Basically, nothing really seemed to affect this significantly. So one of the last things I did here on Camino was check out the alternate fire. You'll see we're going to get 2 shots out of it for an overheat. And that's whether you have improved cooling on or not. It's completely unaffected by improved cooling. The reset speed isn't changed. Heat generated isn't changed. And then, man, is this thing slow. One thing I did find out, though, is that the marksman card does affect it, which could be good. Basically, it gives you up to 4 shots with a complete overheat instead of 2. And then if you want, you can shoot 3 shots and, hit a manual reload and get away and keep your marksman. So it does help. If you like the alternate fire, I would definitely recommend marksman. Especially because, like I said, it makes up for the improved cooling that you're probably also going to be missing out on. The gold overheats only give you extra time to shoot 1 mortar, which again isn't really very much. That again does not depend on improved cooling in any way. Obviously, expert weapons handling does improve this, so we're going to see an extra 2 shots effectively out of this. Again, is that really worth it? Man, your call to make. The expert weapons handling combined with marksman, combined with improved cooling, could make an absolutely insane length of time shooting a normal blaster. So one final little tidbit here that I checked out that might encourage you to use marksman with the alternate fire, if you like the alternate fire, is that you can shoot a mortar, blast 100% holding the trigger down, get the cooldown, and then blast another mortar straight out. Gives you a pretty good little amount of burst DPS, and if you like the mortar, then it's a pretty good thing to do. And then I'll demonstrate here that you can barely even shoot a mortar and get a decent burst out without the marksman active. Okay, so next thing we're going to be looking at is the blast radius here. We can see we're at 5 meters. We're right at the edge of the 5 turning into the 6 on those binoculars, which actually is right about 5 meters. This brings us down to like 4.8 or something, or smaller, probably even higher than that. But notice as soon as we got a little bit closer, we took damage. So 5 meters is pretty much the radius. And when I said, the 5 to 6 transition is actually 5, this kind of demonstrates it. You scoot up against the wall, it's still showing 1, even though clearly I'm 0, right? So we're rounding up. It's a ceiling function, basically. And as soon as we break over to 1 to 2, that means we just broke over 1. It's like 1.1 or something, right? So if we back up to the edge of 5 and 6, that is the 5 meter distance. And right at that edge of 5 and 6, you take no damage, and get any closer than that, and you start taking damage. Okay, so now we're going to look at the amount of damage that it does. Direct hit, we're looking at 100 damage. Another thing I wondered about is, well, are we going to get a headshot bonus? Or are we going to get marksman for this? And the answer to that is pretty much a sharp no. You still get 100 damage, and when I did get kills like this, I wasn't getting the marksman bonus. Okay, so now we commence the range testing. We're right at the edge of, right at 1 meter, so right at the point where it breaks over from 1 to 2, we get that 100 damage. And then as we step back to that point between 2 and 3, right at 2 meters, we're going to see 76 damage, decrease of about 26 damage. Now we step back to the 3 to 4, so 3 meter point, and we're going to see 50 damage. Step back to 4 meters, and we're down to 22, so we're still seeing a pretty consistent decrease of 25 or so per meter. And then we're going to get right out at the edge, right about 5, and we don't see any damage. We can nudge ourselves in just a little bit more and start seeing damage again. So if we take a look at this graph here, we get a flat 100 up to the first meter, and then we decrease pretty much perfectly linearly down to 0 at 5 meters, which is actually a pretty fair amount of range for this thing. You can definitely just chunk these into a room and get some decent damage. So the next thing I want to do is look at damage fall off. You're going to see 10 damage here out at about 40 meters, and that is as low as it can get. I nudge him forward slowly, and eventually right there you see 31, which means we just hit for 11 damage right as we broke over the 40 meter mark. I nudge him in and find 20 damage, which is the maximum damage that you can do, and then I back him up very steadily until I start hitting for 19, and that break seems to happen right about 20 meters. So we hit for 20 damage out to 20 meters, and then linearly decrease down to 10 damage at 40 meters. So the next thing I wanted to do was determine the effective range of this gun, and I think this will be probably the most useful thing we will have for comparing to the other weapons in the future. So essentially, I take the gun, I line them up at 10 meters, I shoot them until they're dead, and I do it 3 times. Then I back them up to 20 meters, and I do it 3 times. And then I back them up to 30 meters, sorry, and then 40 meters, and I do it 3 times each. And the problem with this gun is, well, if you have the alt fire, you're not able to aim. So I'd like to test, well, what if you can't aim? So this is with reduced or no reduced spread and no aiming. Then I equip reduced spread and don't aim. And then I'm going to equip no reduced spread and aim. And then I'm going to equip the reduced spread again and aim. Ad infinitum, I swear, my goodness. It's actually kind of funny because editing this was more painful than actually doing it, but you know what? We got the results. You're going to notice too the timers in the bottom are relative to the 5 times speed, so those times you're seeing aren't accurate, but I did time them and I did record them, and we'll summarize those when we're finished here. So this is what we found. Obviously, this is 4 separate lines of 4 different colors, showing whether we have reduced spread equipped or whether we were aiming or not. Obviously, I decided to do the no aim test as a simulation of having the alt fire equipped, because obviously with alt fire equipped, you can't aim while shooting. So that blue line there is if you chose to equip your alternate fire and go with improved cooling instead of the reduced spread. That blue line there is what that would look like. Now, obviously 10, 20 meters, not too bad. I'm going to flash a quick screenshot up here of 10 meters and then throw one up here of 20 meters. And you can tell, really, in a lot of fights, that's pretty reasonable. Those inside maps, Hoth and stuff like that, you wouldn't do too badly. But I'm going to flash 30 meters here. And I think that you could agree that really a lot of your fighting is going to happen in this 20 to 30 meter range. And if you look back at this graph here, there's a pretty steep difference in that 20 to 30 meter range when it comes to not being able to aim and not having reduced spread equipped. So I would not recommend that. And then obviously if you get any further than 30, it just completely falls off. Now, the other 3 scenarios hold together pretty tightly, and actually you can see at 20 they kind of invert themselves, and at 30 they flip themselves back. I think part of that is due to the increased spread actually having the chance to hit the head because of just random spread, and that kind of makes up for some of the misses a little bit. And then back at 30 it gets to where the misses are overcoming that chance for headshots. But in general, they all stay pretty close to each other, not a big deal, and you only really start seeing the spread happen, or the difference happen, out near 30 and 40 meters. The distance between 30 and 40. Out here at 40 meters, you'll actually see that the no reduced spread and aiming actually did worse than the reduced spread without aiming. You can see that red line there is the reduced spread without aiming, hip fire, and the reduced spread aim, no reduced spread aim is in yellow there, and you'll see it's slightly longer at the 40 meter mark. So again, I think that really demonstrates that if you're going to go alternate fire, you really ought to go reduced spread and not go with improved cooling. And honestly, again, improved cooling doesn't even affect your alternate fire. So if you're really wanting to maximize that alt fire, you'd probably want to go with marksman, land a headshot with your normal gun, and then you've got up to 4 mortars in one cooldown. And you've got better accuracy than you would even if you could aim with no reduced spread, right? So that right there, I think, is reason enough to go with reduced spread. But obviously that green line down there is reduced spread while aiming. You really shrink that time to kill a lot. Now, obviously, this is still a close-range weapon. We still see a significant increase in time to kill from the 20 meter to 40 meter mark, and there are going to be other guns that perform better there. But this is a close-range, assault-style, mow them down sort of weapon, and I think this graph really shows that. So one last little thing I couldn't help but look at was the bolt speed. So I'm going to line this guy at 100 meters away, and I'm going to see how much time it takes for the bolt to go from my gun to his face. And it comes out to right around 0.2 seconds. Obviously, with how fast this thing's moving, the frame rate of my recording kind of affected it pretty heavily. But it lands around 0.2 seconds. And that would mean over 100 meters at 0.2 seconds would mean 500 meters per second, which is a nice round number. It makes sense. I'm curious to see if we're going to see that out of most other guns. I bet you they kept it pretty consistent, but we'll find out. Anyway, couldn't help but go ahead and record it, and I can go ahead and compare that to the rest of the guns as well. So that was the TL-50. As much nerdy analysis as I could handle for right now. But I hope this taught you a couple things about it. I've got a little bit of a gameplay going on in the background again here. I was trying to use the alternate fire, and honestly, it was rough. I was having some trouble with it, but that was one fun little moment with it there. So anyway, yeah, it's a good gun. I think it really shows its strength there in that 10 to 20 and maybe out to 30 meter range, but either way, time to kill is pretty short. I look forward to seeing how it compares to the other weapons. Anyway, catch you guys in the next one.